witnesses claiming her reflection started moving on its own before she vanished. The weirdest part is that she genuinely looked like she was struggling against something inside the mirror. Does anyone else's family have weird rules about household objects that they get deadly seriously? I'm starting to think that those superstitions exist for a reason. The next one is by a library rat since 1984. It's titled, "Worked at Windsor Castle's Royal Library for over a decade and it was haunted." I used to work at Windsor Castle, specifically in the Royal Library, from the late 1980s until I left in 2003. After my third child was born, I wanted to stay home with my kids, and honestly, after everything I experienced there, I was kind of ready to be done. I wasn't anyone important, just a junior library assistant. Basically, I helped with cataloguing, pulling materials, handling rare books, and that sort of thing. The Royal Library isn't open to the public, and everything in there is strictly protected and preserved. We worked in quiet rooms with controlled temperature and lighting and had to follow a lot of rules. But here's the thing, Windsor is haunted as hell, like truly, and I didn't believe in that kind of thing when I started. The first thing I saw was Queen Elizabeth I. Yes, really. It was around 1992 and I was working late in one of the archive rooms, just shelving. I turned around and saw a woman in an elaborate old gown, stiff white collar, red hair, just standing in the doorway. She didn't say anything, didn't move. I thought I was going mad. She looked too real to be a hallucination. Then she walked backwards into the wall and disappeared. I will never forget that image. It was the most bizarre, unnatural thing I've ever seen. There's a black dog that shows up around the west side of the library. No one talks about it officially, but we all knew. I saw it twice. It just appears, trots by, then vanishes when you turn to look at it properly. Someone once told me it's connected to a prince who died in childhood, but who knows? All I know is it gave me chills every time. Other weird stuff. Footsteps above you when no one's upstairs. Pages turning in a book no one is touching. Cold spots even in temperature-controlled rooms. Whispers in Latin or French when no one's around. A man in old-fashioned clothes staring from a locked archive room. The room was empty when we unlocked it. It wasn't constant, but it happened enough that I stopped questioning it. I've never talked about this publicly before, and honestly I'm a bit nervous even typing this out. We were always told to be discreet, and working in any royal residence comes with that, with a sense of don't ask, don't tell when it comes to that kind of thing. But after 20 years, I just wanted to share it somewhere with people who might get it. I haven't been back since, and I don't think I want to. Happy to answer questions. Thanks for reading. I don't think I this sales nights one, and it's titled The Luxor Pyramid Hotel. The Luxor Pyramid Hotel in Las Vegas is a cursed paranormal hotbed. 30 mile if it matters. I'm in sales and Las Vegas is a part of my territory. Although I don't live there, I spend a lot of time there for work and need to keep my hotel bill under a certain amount in order for my company to reimburse me. The Luxor is cheap, has a good valet parking, and is close to my work event. Plus, I never stayed there before. Probably has some dated charm to it, I thought. Fuck it, why not? When I walked into the lobby, I felt a mix of unease and curiousness. The Egyptian theme is so dated, yet the architecture was so ambitious for its time, it's hard not to appreciate it. I get to my room and I just start laughing. This is the worst hotel I've ever stayed in by far. It was built in '93 for some reason. It feels much more dated than that. I always get a room with 2 queens everywhere I stay because hotels routinely skimp on blankets. So I take the blankets from one bed and bring them to the other so that I'm cozy. I do not bring over any pillows since I had enough and wouldn't be able to lay down straight with 6 huge pillows. Anyways, I wake up early, work out in my room, shower. Housekeeping knocks on my door while I'm getting ready. I had to really yell there to hear that the room was still occupied. That's kind of annoying, so I put a do not disturb sign on my door handle, which stays on for the entirety of my stay. Right as I get ready, the fire alarm goes off. This is the first time this has happened at any hotel I've ever stayed at, I thought. While evacuating, security told me our elevator was shut off, but the opposite sides were still functional, meaning the alarm was triggered somewhere on my side of the resort. I had to take the fire escape down from the 12th floor. I googled Luxor fire alarm and I guess this happens a couple of times every month. I wondered if this was the case with every hotel in Vegas, but chalked it up to it being so cheap, attracting a lot of riffraff. I come back to my room a few hours later to meditate and clear my head for a work event. I beeline straight for the window and check out the view, then I look at my bed. For some reason, the pillows from the guest bed were stacked up parallel on top of each other, 3 high on my bed. Nothing was stolen, and I'm not sure if anything else was misplaced. I wouldn't have remembered the previous location of any other objects in my room, but I knew for a fact that I didn't do this. It kind of gave me the creeps at first, but then I thought security probably was looking for the cause of the fire alarm and looked in my room even though I had a do not disturb sign. Then I thought, but why would something that triggers a fire alarm be under the pillows of the guest bed? And why would they stack them up so neatly on mine? But I was there for an important work event and was trying to relax before. I had better things to focus on. I dim the curtains, lay down and take deep breaths. 20 minutes in, my manager calls me, says he needs me to cover an emergency meeting for him. In a rush, I throw on my things and leave, not touching anything else in my room and leaving the curtains closed. I don't come back until after my work event. Got back to my room around 11, open the door and my brain's alarm goes off. Something doesn't look right. The curtains were wide open. I knew I didn't leave them that way, and again, nothing was stolen. This freaked me out, but I was trying to mentally justify this. I thought I just turned up the AC this morning and the being naked, wet and vulnerable as an opportunity to escalate. I prayed hard while constant pumping and upping of care throughout the night. I chalked the noises up to loud, unruly neighbours, but the whole time I never saw anyone leave or enter any of the rooms around me. In the morning I looked at the curtains, still closed. It wasn't a draft that opened them yesterday. I got on a call with my team, said I was excited to leave because weird stuff keeps happening. They asked what I meant and I told them everything. One of my colleagues, who was a Vegas local, told me the Luxor is notorious for being haunted and cursed, and this is a well-known thing people have said about staying here. As I was leaving, I ran into a security guard outside the elevator and asked her if security goes into rooms, even if they have do not disturb signs. If the fire alarm is going off, to see what the origins are. She basically said they can do that on paper, but she doesn't remember a time that they have. I told her about the pillows, then about the curtains being open, and she wasn't giving me anything. So I straight up asked her if the place was haunted. She told me no, and that she's never heard that and no one has ever reported that to her. I thought weird, maybe my coworker just knows a couple people who are bullshitters. Maybe all this stuff was in my head. I asked the front desk about security going into rooms and she said no, never. I then asked about guests reporting objects moving in their rooms when they're gone. She again said no, never. She had never heard that and wasn't giving an inch. I then said, alright, be straight with me, is this place haunted? Have any other guests ever reported unexplainable things happening in their room? She said no, never, I haven't heard that from any other guests. That's terrible, somebody moved your stuff around, you should file a report. I smiled and said it's alright because nothing was stolen. I then googled, is the Luxor Hotel haunted? If nothing popped up I would have dropped it, but boy, it was obvious at this point that the employees there are trained to gaslight you that ghosts, because ghosts are bad for business. Not only is this a common experience among the guests at the Luxor, but it's one of the most common experiences among travelers. It's incredibly well known and documented to be a paranormal hotbed. I'm glad I didn't know this while I was staying there, or else I wouldn't be able to sleep. In the Google search results, the fourth result was a 3-star review about the 12th floor being haunted. I stayed on the 12th floor. Not only did I stay there, but my room was on the closest to the elevator, right in the middle of the 12th floor. The most 12th floor room on the 12th floor, if you will. I guess this place has been cursed from the very beginning, with lots of deaths in construction, mafia deaths buried beneath the property, allegedly. 4 suicides between its opening in '93 and now, a couple of murders and accidental deaths from safety hazards on some of the attractions. I heard the shape of the resort doesn't help, but I'm no expert. Never staying at that place ever again. Glad it's getting demolished in 2026. Good riddance. If I was in like a hotel room and my stuff was being moved around, I would automatically assume that someone was sneaking into my room and messing with me, some kind of weirdo. I would like demand to switch rooms. I'd be so scared. Okay, this next one is by Tasty-2-2397. It's titled, I can't believe I actually saw a ghost the other night with my own eyes. I was going to the store about 10:30 p.m. My car overheats. I live in a very rural area. Pull over to let it cool down and check the radiator and drive a couple more miles and it overheats again. At this point it's after midnight. I am not too far away from my house, a 1.5 mile walk. I decide instead of risking hurting the car, I'll just hoof it. The road I live on is a very rough, mountainous road made of dirt, and I was not far from it, so I strike out not too worried, because I knew why the car overheated and I needed a walk anyway. I walk down the 2-in highway, then 2/3 also down my dirt road. I'm moving a good clip. There was some moonlight, enough to where I didn't need a flashlight anyway. I see something coming up a neighbor's driveway and hear faint steps on the gravel on my left. It's walking right up that driveway out towards the main road where I'm walking past. My first thought is shit, one of the neighbors heard or saw me walking down the road in the middle of the night and think I'm messing around, casing houses or something. At any moment I expect to see a flashlight, a gun, or a combination of the two, and some questions. Then I realize what I'm seeing. There's a man walking towards me, except I can see through him. It was kind of like Predator in the beginning, where it took the texture of the surrounding trees, but as I got closer it was very much a man, a little bigger build, but in the same height, wearing what I thought was a plaid shirt, lumberjack style shirt, and denim pants, and he had longer hair. Theo Vaughn, kinda. He walks out of the driveway within about 30 feet, and he comes alongside me and walks beside me for about 100 to 150 feet, 30 feet to my left along this split rail wooden fence. When I get to the end of that fence, he stops and puts his arm up on it and just stares at me. I did not say a word. I just kept walking, the hair on my head standing on end, and I saw the man. I also saw through him. It was just like when they beam people up in Star Trek when they look faint. It was like he was 40% solid maybe, and only 30 foot away for a good 1 to 2 minutes straight. He deliberately came down that driveway to meet me on the road and walk beside me, watching me. The look he had was sad, or like he wanted to tell me something but couldn't find his voice. So I kept walking, and I'm terrified to look back, and I just keep saying to myself, what the fuck? Did that really just happen? I was never scared really, just more in disbelief of what I had witnessed. I began to get really disturbed by it as I got closer to my house. It was creeping me out more and more. So the next morning I'm in the kitchen telling my dad about it. How I've always believed in aliens and UFOs, but never ghosts. Not in the slightest, and he's looking at me skeptically for sure. But then he wanted to know exactly where. Suddenly it dawns on me I remember him telling me about a year ago, before I moved back in, that one of the neighbors we barely knew had killed himself in that house down the driveway where that split rail fence is. I have tears in my eyes and my hair is standing on end and my nerves are electrified writing this now. Up until the other night I thought all paranormal activity was outright BS. Then I saw a ghost. Like, I'll take a polygraph. God strike me dead if I am lying. Saw a ghost with my own sober eyes. I can only guess it was that unfortunate soul. I have been shaken ever since. That's really sad. Actually, it makes me feel really sad. He was sad and probably wanted a bit of company. Oh, bless. I mean, don't get me wrong. If I was there, I'd be thoroughly creeped out, but reading it, I would just feel bad. This next one is by Weekend. now it's creepy and ridiculous. Back in college, my classmates and I had an overnight group session at one of our friends' houses to finish a case study for a presentation. It was past midnight. Everyone else was in the dining area and I was alone in the bedroom typing away on the laptop. Suddenly, from my peripheral vision, I saw something, not just a shadow, an entity. Things that echo vibes, long hair covering the face, but here's the weird detail. The hair wasn't jet black like in horror movies. It was dry, frizzly, in this brown, copperish color. Exactly like over-processed damaged hair you'd see after too many bleach sessions. I could still picture it clearly, split ends, right texture, the works. She was behind me, slightly leaning like she was looking over my shoulder at the screen, but I couldn't see her face, just the hair. It lasted maybe a second, blink and she was gone. I froze and I bolted straight to the dining area, shaking, and told my classmates I saw something. Instant a creepy overnight ghost story for that night, and then life moved on. I forgot about it. Until today. Fast forward 17 or 18 years later, I'm brushing my ash blonde hair, getting ready to go to my favorite salon for a treatment, because my hair is dry as fuck after a recent touch-up. I'm looking in the mirror inspecting the damage when it hits me like a horror plot twist. Was it me? Like, did I time travel? Was that ghost actually future me, fried hair and all, looking over my own work on that laptop? Was I just critiquing myself from the future? The hair color matches, the frizz matches. The only thing missing is the ability to astral project again, which I could do back then, but that's another story. So yeah, either I saw a ghost, or I'm destined to become one for a split second 17 years in the past. Guess I'll find out once I land time travel, or remote view, or maybe just invest in better conditioner. That's really, really crazy. That's very interesting, actually. Someone in the comments said, I have a story like this. I was at a low point, just had a baby, in a yucky marriage, not feeling great about myself, and weighing an extra 30 pounds. I'm on a trail running that I've run 100 times, totally in my head, sorting life out and putting my miles in, vegging on DS. As a runner, you can gauge how bad you're out of shape by how regular routes feel. I round a corner to go up a steep hill and a woman is paused there looking out over the lake. I'm out of breath and grown a bit about the hill. She smiles and looks at me. I say, oof, this hill always gets me, barely looking at her. And she says, oh, don't worry, you got it, so assuredly. A smile in her voice. The other day I got a glimpse of myself heading out on a run, and you know what? I recognized that woman. Same hat and shorts I didn't own at the time. Same strong legs and the summer tan. Me from a better place than 6 years later. That's so interesting. Okay, this next one is by financial_rich_247. I thought I was losing my mind until someone else saw it too. This might sound strange, but I swear it happened. I was sitting in my apartment late at night, exhausted after work, but too wired to sleep. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a tall, shadowy figure standing near my bedroom door. My first thought was, okay, I'm just tired. This is a hallucination. I rubbed my eyes, looked again, and it was still there. Not moving, not doing anything, just standing. I tried to she had seen it too. That's when I panicked, turned on all the lights, and nothing was there. I kept telling myself it was a shared hallucination, maybe a trick of the shadows or us being half asleep, but it felt too real. I haven't been able to shake it since. Has anyone else ever experienced something like this, where you think it's just your imagination, but then someone else confirms they saw it too? Again, if this was like my experience, my first thought would be like, oh my god, there's a creep that's broke into my house. But like flicking the lights on and not being there anymore, oh my god, I would be like, nope. I'd get like the essentials and like go somewhere else, like stay at someone's place, and I'd like, I don't care if I have to pay the rent. Until the lease is up, I'm getting a new place. That's so scary. I would not be able to sleep. I'm just glad I have my dog and my fiance, of course, but like when he's at work, I feel safe because I have my dog. Like she would warn me if someone or something was there. Okay. This next one is by Much-Evening 6686, and it's titled What Happened During a Paranormal TV Shoot That Never Aired. This is something that happened back when I was working as a production assistant on a paranormal TV show. It happened during the filming of one of the paranormal specials that the show used to do on location. The concept of the shoot was simple. A famous psychic was to visit ordinary people's homes and perform exorcisms on the spirits said to haunt them. Just to be clear, I'm not going to reveal who the psychic was, and I'd appreciate if no one tries to guess or speculate. I have absolutely no intention of criticizing or slandering them. There was a reporter, the psychic, a cameraman, and a few crew members like me, but none of us, including myself, had any sort of spiritual sensitivity. The house we visited was in an old town somewhere in Massachusetts. If I remember correctly, my memory is a bit hazy, so I'm sorry if I got that wrong. It was a large old house, and the request had come from the wife who lived there. Ever since they bought the house, she said strange things had been happening constantly inside, and bad luck had been plaguing their lives. The wife had very strong spiritual sensitivity. She said a young boy's ghost was wandering all throughout the house. Toys would start moving on their own even when no one was nearby. They would hear crying coming from the bathroom and the sound of footsteps running rapidly across the second floor day or night. She also said there had been accidents and spiritual disturbances happening frequently. Hearing all this, the famous psychic began walking through the house, performing the exorcism. All the spirits dwelling in this house have been cleansed. You may now return to your normal life. You'll no longer be troubled by evil spirits. And with that, the psychic's part was done, and the shoot wrapped up without any issues. The reporter and psychic headed back to the production van. The rest of the crew were cleaning up, and I was sitting alone in the dining kitchen. I happened to glance over and saw the wife standing in the corner of the kitchen, head down, wearing a deeply troubled expression. Something about it bothered me, so I asked, "Is everything alright?" She suddenly looked up at me and asked with a serious, almost angry gaze, "Can that psychic really see spirits?" I stammered, well, they're quite famous in the field. Then she said, "Then why didn't they notice? That child's spirit has been clinging to my leg ever since that person stepped into this house." I looked down at her feet, but I couldn't see anything. Still, the thought crossed my mind, I would still be creeped out knowing that it's probably just like some sort of episode that I haven't had to double. Like, oh my god, that's so creepy. Okay, this next one is by BBC Connect and it's titled The Story That Made Me Believe in the Paranormal. Hello, I want to share a story that has been bothering me for about 10 years already. To this day, I still can't properly explain what exactly we saw back then. When I was 11 years old, I went to visit my grandmother in a village in western Ukraine. My grandmother had her own garden, flower beds, and she loved flowers very much. It was early spring then, and the season of snowdrops, and she asked me to go to the forest and pick some flowers for her. My older sister went with me. She was 19 years old at that time. To get to the forest, we had to walk across a huge field that went steeply uphill. At the top you could already see the forest. Before the field, we passed several residential houses standing almost separately from the rest of the village, and then an old abandoned military base. After it, the climb to the forest began. The base itself looked creepy. Half-destroyed buildings, concrete rust, absolute silence all around. We climbed around there a bit, messed around, and then went further into the forest for the snowdrops. But there was something else strange. Right in the middle of that slope there was a hill, almost sticking out from the hillside. And in the center of the hill grew 3 huge oak trees, positioned in an almost perfect triangle. Even back then, that place gave off some unpleasant feeling. We picked a full basket of snowdrops and were already heading back. We were walking down the field and I noticed that everywhere on the ground there were little clumps of hay or straw lying around. Like a kid, I started stepping on them just for fun. My sister immediately said, "Don't step on them or you might wake something up." I didn't really pay attention to it. We walked a little further downhill and suddenly I got a very strange feeling, like someone was watching us from behind. I don't know why, but I suddenly really wanted to turn around. I turned back around toward the hill with the 3 oak trees, and then I saw it. Right between the trees there was a figure floating. Floating, not standing. It looked like a woman in a long white dress. Long black hair completely covered her face. At that moment it reminded me of the girl from The Ring. The creepiest part was that she didn't seem to touch the ground. She was just hanging in the air. At first I froze and blinked several times, thinking I was imagining it. But the figure didn't disappear. Then, without taking my eyes off it, I suddenly grabbed my sister and told her to look there. I will never forget her face at that moment. Her eyes became huge, her pupils widened. I couldn't even tell whether it was more shock or animal fear. I was holding her hand and her hand started shaking. She whispered, "Run." After that, we just took off running downhill across the field like crazy. While running, I turned around one more time to check if it was following us, but there was already nothing there. From the moment we started running, only a few seconds had passed. The figure had simply disappeared. We stopped only about a kilometer later. While running, we lost almost all the flowers. When we told our grandmother what had happened, she replied that during World War II, near those 3 oak trees, the Germans allegedly tortured and executed Jews and Ukrainians. The strangest thing is that years later I started hearing very similar stories from other people. One of my female friends told me that while staying with her parents at a country house near a forest, she went out onto a balcony at night and saw in the distance the exact same silhouette. A woman with long hair and white clothes, who seemed seemed not to walk, but to float through the trees deeper into the forest. To this day, I still don't know what it was. Some people say a banshee, others a witch, others restless souls, or some kind of unclean energy. But that feeling of terror and the atmosphere of that place stayed with me for the rest of my life. Maybe someone has experienced something similar. That is super creepy, especially because it happened in the woods. Oh my god. Okay, this next one is by Lord_Jord_. It's titled My Experience Living in a Haunted House UK. Just a few years ago, I lived in a cozy house in the Essex countryside with my family. The house was quite old, so hearing noises was quite common. It was until one day the creaking and tapping sounds turned into whispers and movement. The noises became unsettling for us, but we put it down to the neighbours and the age of the house. Why do I say the house was haunted? Let me tell you about a few of our experiences. One night I was watching TV and having a few beers with my dad. My mum, brother and baby sister were fast asleep upstairs. All of a sudden we heard someone booming down the stairs, and we assumed someone had woken up desperate for the toilet, so we thought nothing of it. Whoever it was ran into the toilet at the bottom of the stairs, slammed the door and turned the light on, which confirmed our suspicion. Since my dad is a bit of a joker, and he'd had a couple of beers, he called out my mum's name and then my brother's. We got no response. After a minute of silence, we both stood to see who it was and why they weren't responding. When we got to the bathroom door and called their names again, we still had no response. My dad opened the door. Nobody. Surely whoever it was forgot to turn the light off and went back to bed. No chance. Since the house is old, the stairs and floorboards are creaky as hell, and there would be no way to silently get back upstairs. Next up, the reflection. I was alone in my bedroom upstairs when I was getting dressed to go downstairs. I sat on the bed opposite my big TV, which was off when I looked up and saw my reflection on the TV. Next to me for a solid second or two, I saw what clearly looked like a female silhouette walk away from me before vanishing. What made it creepier is that I also saw it in the corner of my eye, moving in the same direction. If I just saw it on the TV, or just saw it in the corner of my eye, I would have ignored it, but the fact that I saw it in both, as if it were actually there, spooked the hell out of me. When I told my mum, she seemed nervous and mentioned how she had seen something similar in her room, but assumed it was her shadow. To top it off, I moved out of my bedroom, which I shared with my brother. I moved to the room downstairs next to the living room, which was originally a room where we shoved our shoes and other random bits. From day one of sleeping in this room, I saw shadows. I heard whispers and footsteps and my light flicker. Felt something touching me and the legs. Every single night would be something new, and I'd often get a little sleep and hide under my covers, feeling like someone was constantly watching me. My worst night was when I was falling asleep and I heard tapping on the window just next to my bed. The tapping was coming from less than a meter from my face since the window was so close to me. The taps were inconsistent, human-like. I froze until I heard what sounded like someone dragging their finger down the window. My fight-or-flight instincts kicked in and I hid under all my blankets and stayed still for around 10 minutes. Then before I heard footsteps coming from my door to the side of my bed. I know the door didn't open as I would have heard it, although I couldn't decide whether it was comforting or horrifying to know that whatever I was hearing wasn't human. It's still easy to blame mine and my family's imagination, so here's what put the cherry on the cake for me. After 2 or 3 years of living in the house, we arranged a house swap so we could live closer to my town. When the couple who were looking to swap houses with us visited the house, I said to my mum as a joke, should I tell them about the things that have been happening, to which she hushed me. The lady looked at me as if she knew exactly what I was talking about before asking, are you seeing a ghost? My heart sank and I nervously laughed before saying yes. She then had said what has stuck with me for years. Is it a woman? An older woman? The figure I had been seeing and the figure I saw in the TV reflection was a woman, slow and slightly hunched over. It turns out the lady was some sort of psychic who says she sees spirits. Usually I'm skeptical, but the fact she confirmed this exact description of what I was seeing without any hints was undeniable evidence. She assured me the spirit was friendly and that I had no need to be scared of her. Around 6 months after we swapped houses, the lady contacted my mum. She had done some digging on the house in her free time and discovered that an old lady passed away in the house, in the room I moved into downstairs. I was always skeptical about psychics and ghosts, but after spending years in the house and then speaking to that lady, I'm absolutely convinced ghosts are real. I truly believe it's easy to dismiss the idea of paranormal activity until you experience it yourself. That's so creepy, even if they say, oh, they're not. Even if they say they're not just, my brain is just, even if they say they're not meaning any harm, I think it's still just too creepy. I actually have a few really creepy paranormal encounters of my own. If any of you would like a video on something like that at some point. But this is gonna be the last story for tonight, guys. This one is by U.J. Manshit. Titled Multiple Encounters While Camping with Friends. I've posted this on the normal subs, but somehow I've never visited or posted on this one. Here is the encounter that really messed up my life. Sorry to all those who have read this in the other subs. Background. I know this sounds fantastical and wild, and I agree. This is in fairly remote backcountry, West Virginia, which is known for being old and haunted. It was experienced entirely by 2 of us, but the worst parts by all 4. This led to all 4 of us at some point battling personal issues in our lives that I believe stem directly from this encounter. The following is, at least to my memory, and what I've been able to corroborate with the other people that were there, 100% accurate and true. When I was 17, in 2004, we had a bad experience camping near haunted train tunnels and sites of sudden tragic death. History of the immediate 1 square mile area. Mother and son drowning in the creek nearby. Old man hung himself from the old dead tree that hung over the water. Cliche, creepy, dead hanging tree, I know. Drug dealers killed in state police shootouts at a nearby hunting cabin, and many This is private property on the backside of a big forested hill around the creek flows in which the creek flows in a huge several mile long bend. Camp set up, fire going. Shortly after nightfall, my cousin and I sat on the creek bank maybe 20 yards away from the camp, spotlighting fish in the water. We began to hear a rhythmic slosh of what sounded like someone wading through the water, maybe halfway up their shin deep, so we shined the light around the stream. We then spotted the symmetrically and rhythmically consistent disturbance made by what looked and sounded like invisible feet or legs sloshing towards us. When we would turn our spotlight off, it would start. It would stop when we illuminated. It was reaching to us, and this was the first ice bucket stomach clench moment we knew that this was not fish and could not rationalize what was happening. This scared us pretty badly, but we decided it was best to keep it to ourselves and join the others gathered at the fire. As we made our way back, we heard the sloshing make its way to where we were on the bank, and the noise stopped. Given the speed we witnessed it moving and how far it was from us when we were watching it, it must have sped up to make it to the bank we were on in the amount of time it took us to get back to camp. Others at the camp had heard it as well and figured we had either gotten in or somehow riled up some fish, but we just played it off. It sounded and looked like an invisible person wading towards us through the water. After the noise ended at the creek bank, we all saw the tall grass disturbed as something we couldn't see ran around the foliaged perimeter of our circularly cleared campsite. This could have been an animal, but it was vast. We then began to hear what sounded like a man talking to us, as in speaking into the ear of each person, the left ear if it matters. At first it sounded garbled, but after maybe 15 to 20 seconds, we could all make out the words saying we shouldn't be there and we needed to leave, before finally addressing us directly and saying slightly more forcefully, "You need to leave." Obviously this was terrifying, and at first we thought there was a person or group of people out there walking up on our camp, and that is dangerous. We were all frozen with fear, but then adrenaline hit, as we freaked out and started to run to our ATV. All four of us saw a tall black shadow man wearing what looked like a hat, relaxing against the front of our ATV. It straightened up when we saw it, and it saw us, and it just sort of hung there staring at us for a few seconds. No feet. The legs ended in sort of wavy lines, like looking above the fire at the heat waves. It stood out against the dark night behind it. The girl screamed, which broke our fear freeze, and it zipped like the flash back towards the train tunnels people had died in. Interestingly, when we went to start the ATV, it turned over sluggishly as if the battery had been slightly drained, despite working fine not too long before when we rode it down. This entire event happened over the course of maybe 5 to 10 minutes and within an hour of the sun going down. After putting our story out there, I received a lot of feedback from people who have also had bad encounters in this area over many years. Even a guy I worked with, who I didn't know knew this area, told me that my uncle had hired him to trap in that area, and it was the only place he didn't check traps alone at night. He said it was almost like the animals leave that place at night. No less than a month later, my uncle, who owns the property, was up on the hill raccoon hunting at night with a dog. At some point the dog was on a rock face up above is easygoing but also no nonsense. In his text to my mother, he said, "I've never told anybody this before, and I probably won't again. The man in the hat the kids saw at the creek that night helped to pick me up off the ground and put me back on my ATV and get me turned around." Until I heard that, I had always assumed that the shadow man was the one who was trying to scare us out of there. But thinking back on it, maybe he was the one whispering to us, telling us we need to leave and possibly avoid something scarier and more dangerous. Although I have no idea what could have been scarier than that. That one's really creepy. Anything that happens like in the woods is just really creepy to me, like so secluded and dark. Especially if the animals all leave, it's like, okay, what do they know that we don't? A lot of people are saying, and I agree, that they feel like he was trying to warn them all to leave for their own safety. And I agree with that. I don't think he was the one in the water. I think that was something else. But yeah, that is very, very creepy. Very, very creepy. Very, very creepy. Very, very creepy. But that was all the stories we had for tonight, guys. I hope that you enjoyed it. As always, all the links to these posts will be down below, so go and show them a little bit of love. If anyone has any good places where they find true ghost stories, let me know, because I actually kind of struggle to find true ghost stories that aren't either like 2 sentences short, or like just like nothing really happens in them, or like they're just